safe space. We ain't never give a reason you should hide. Compile all your questions, we're taking the quest. Join Tarsha on this journey to discover the rest. Go.
Welcome to the Adoption Journey podcast. I am your host, Tarsha Smith, and welcome to another week and another journey. This week, I am so excited because this is a little different for me. A lot of you know that I recently found my paternal side of my family, and this is a cousin that I just connected with when I found the paternal side of my family. And what's even more interesting is this is a side of that family that nobody knew. So just to dig a little deeper, my biological father did not know who his father was. So therefore, nobody on that side of the family knew this side of the family. And in finding out who my biological father was, I, lo and behold, found a whole nother side of the family, and it starts right here with my cousin, Jerome. Hey, Jerome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not an internet scammer, so that was good.
I am not an internet scammer. He was so gracious, and I want to tell this story, too, because I always say when you go and find or search for your biological family, a lot of people are so afraid because they think that the rejection, what I like to call the rejection monster, is waiting.
Mhm.
And when I reached out to Jerome, and we did connect through DNA, that's first. He has been so open, so gracious, sent me pictures, telling me about my family history, though of course I would not know, and my siblings wouldn't know because, again, nobody knew this side of the family. And am forever grateful and so gracious for you being so open and giving
Oh,
me
wow.
like all these stories and history and everything and helping me connect the dots and helping me learn. So thank
Wow,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome. So I just want people to know that, it can be scary, but it's not always scary. And that has not been my testimony. My testimony has been everyone has welcomed me with open arms. And then you just let the relationships fall where they may. I have even had an opportunity to meet Jerome in person already. So that's been
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out we come back down and meet you.
And you know what else,
Bring the rest of the
Jerome?
family.
And I'm gonna have to post this picture because I did post it, not now that I'm talking about it. Your son, you have a couple of kids, and we're gonna get into that.
Mhm.
But I keep hearing how much my baby boy and your son look alike in that picture they took.
What?
I keep hearing that. They're like,
I didn't notice that. I'll have to look back at
go
it.
back and
Okay.
look at that picture. I've heard
That's
that like
crazy.
4 different times. They're like, is that his son? I'm like, yeah. They look alike. I know. I said I saw
Wow.
it that day. That's why I took the picture.
Oh,
I
wow.
saw it.
I did not notice that. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
you're a typical dude. Y'all don't.
Yeah. Well, even more
No.
confirmations then,
Yeah, go
huh?
back and look at that picture. They do. They look alike. I'm not saying they're
Yeah.
twins, but they're certainly you can see the resemblance there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
outside of him being my cousin, Jerome is an adoptive parent himself. And I was like thrilled to find that out and very interested in the story. And he and I have not had this conversation at all. I just know that he's an adoptive parent.
Hmm.
So I want to dive right in and ask, why did you and your wife decide to adopt? Let's start there.
The numbers. Obviously, number one, we before we got married, we said that we wanted uh, 4 children in total, and so we had 3 biological, and we wanted one more. We wanted basically 2 boys, 2 girls, and we wanted to even it out. I mean, just being honest,
Okay.
wanted to even it out, and so we were kind of looking for another girl to adopt. I didn't want to put my wife through the whole childbirth thing again and all of that.
Mm,
So we wanted to adopt a girl. On the more personal side with me, um, I would say it was sort of and I know this word gets a bad connotation, but I want to use it in the sense of well, let me say this: I'm a pastor, so I'm gonna just throw that
Let's
out there
start
so y'all
there.
know. I'm in the church right now, so but so being that I take that's something I take very seriously. So if you think about James 1:27, it says, "True religion is this: to take care of orphans and widows."
Mm.
And I know that word gets a bad word because people are like, "Oh, you religious people," you know. But to me, that word is actually a good word because to be religious means to be a person that takes care of widows and orphans. And so I said, okay, if that's what we already agreed that we're going to do, it also has that connotation to it as well, because I want to actually live out my faith for real.
Okay.
And and I'm not saying everybody has to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying this is for everybody. And we'll probably get into why later. But it was just kind of a calling for me,
Mm.
where God's like, all right, you doing all that preaching, let me see.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting that you said that because I was going to ask because something else that gets a bad rap are
Hmm.
black and brown men don't want to adopt. What do
Oh,
you
yeah, I
say to
heard
that?
that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
okay. So how do you feel about that? Clearly, or did you ever feel like that?
I certainly had, friends and acquaintances, and it's like, oh man, I'm not raising somebody else's kids, and
Mm,
that type of mentality.
yeah.
Um, but again, for me, this is just me. Now, if you're not a person of my particular faith, then I'm not, not talking to you.
Not talking to you.
But just for me, this was an expression of my faith. I could not just, um, the space that we had, the maybe financial means that we had, and all of those things, and get up and preach things and not actually do it. And so
Mm,
this was a way for me to actually put my money where my mouth was and what I'm preaching. So for like we started our church in 2015, and we adopted in 2018.
okay.
Well, they
So
were fosters at that time,
oh,
2018.
okay, so
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
want
then
to
we
turn
adopted
this
later.
corner.
But
Yeah, that's what I wanted to
yeah.
get into. So you started out fostering, and
Hmm.
when you started fostering, was the whole goal to adopt, or you were just going to foster? And
That
then,
was we would go to like some of the foster parent meetings and stuff like that, and
mhm.
for a lot of them, as admirable job as they're doing, their goal was kind of just the money side of it. Um, but for us,
That
that
is a
wasn't
lot of
really.
money. Like,
It was typically ladies, like in their 60s, just got a house full of kids because that's all they could do. They couldn't really go work a regular, you know what I'm saying? And the stories they would tell was just like, ooh, like
yeah, because when you're 60, you
like
probably shouldn't have
I
a house
couldn't
full of
do it
kids.
what they were doing. But um, say it again.
I said because when you're 60, you probably shouldn't have a house full of kids.
Their goal is not to adopt. They're just kind of basically a paid maybe some. I'm not saying all of them. Again, there's some that I mean, there's many that are amazing. But just some of the ones that I was around. It was kind of that's the kind of the impression I got. Some of them were very, obviously we're very good at, we're very good mothers and all of that. So I'm not
Hmm.
downplaying them at all, but that wasn't our mode. So whatever kind of came in from that was just well, we just put that up and put that up to the side, and that type of thing. But our goal from the beginning was to find a girl to adopt.
Okay,
Uh,
so
and yeah.
you have three biological children.
Hmm.
Tell me how your first time you have a foster child in your home. How do your kids handle that? Because that's different.
You have to prepare them way in advance.
Okay.
And matter of fact, um, get buy-in from them.
Would you
And
mind
like,
sharing
and
how old your biological kids are?
I can't remember. I can't remember. He'll be eight. The oldest will be 18 next week. Second oldest is 16, and the other one is 14 now.
Okay,
So
so this
whatever they
was a
were
couple
in
years ago.
2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we showed them videos. I always try to instill in them empathy for other people and what other people are going through and dealing with. So like I would take them to things that would kind of like show them how people in other countries live and all of that. So we showed them of that, like some of the foster agencies made about what it's like, for foster and adopted children and stuff like that. So kind of showed them that for about 2 years or so. Of course, the girl who was the youngest was happy. He's like, well, she just want a sister because she's tired of playing with boys all day. So, because not only was she the only girl in the house, she was like the only girl cousin too. There was like no other girl cousins.
Okay.
They were all any girl cousins were all like way younger than her.
Oh, okay.
And then the one other girl cousin lives in North Carolina, so she was like too far, and she's older.
Too far. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was ecstatic. She was happy, but I had to kind of show them like, from some of the videos, like not, you know what I'm saying? That you're not going to be ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They agreed, and we had to check and double check that they weren't just telling us what we want to hear. Because sometimes, your biological kids would do that too. Well, that's fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We want to help people. It's like, no. Do you understand?
Like, do you for real understand?
They're going to invade your space.
Yeah.
They're going to be in your room and all of that. So, and we kind of dipped our toe in the water with the fostering.
So, what was that first experience like when reality set in?
The first weekend they were there. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, we found the girl, and then the girl had a brother, and they were both in the system. So at that time, I was like, I cannot, as a pastor, I was like, I cannot take the girl and just leave the boy out. There's no way I could do that. I wouldn't want somebody to do that to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was like, just send them both. I can't just have him just by himself and then looking like y'all took my sister but not me. Like what? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we took them both as foster
because they're
kids
old enough to know what's happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
And they would tell us this happened, that happened, this happened, and they will go through the whole sequence. And I would be like, wow, they just tell their whole business without they don't care. Like they tell anybody, like, yep, I live here because this happened.
And I just want the listeners to understand that you weren't dealing with babies like these.
No, not at all.
Children. Okay.
It's the biological age, the trauma age, which I'll call it, and the mental age are all just depending on the day and depending on what's going on.
So what happened that first weekend?
Was that?
What happened that first weekend?
Oh yeah, the first weekend they the boy had come to find out has asthma. So he had a very bad asthma attack literally the first weekend. I think it's probably because changing environments, changing homes.
Yeah.
We had a dog and all, but we didn't know that. We didn't know he had asthma. So literally that first weekend I had to his temperature was going over 100 and all of that, and I had to pretty much like pick him up and carry him and put him in the car and take him down to our children's hospital here in Detroit. And I ended up having to stay with him in the hospital for like a week or so. Luckily, my job, let me just work from the hospital at that time. Wow. A lot of jobs won't let you do that.
So hold on, yeah. I got to ask, what is that like? You just met this child. Now you got to rush this child to the hospital and then spend a week in the hospital.
You feel bad. I'm trying to take care of this kid. And did I screw something up by not thinking about the dog and, all of that stuff? So, so it was partially that. Part of it was trying to figure out, okay, wow, this is going on. Now I got to figure out how to navigate work.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you get a foster child, they don't come with medical history for the most part, right? Because you said you didn't know that he had asthma.
I don't or anything. It might have
Okay,
been,
because that's a
but they
major
typically
thing.
do. Yes, yeah,
Okay, they do. Okay, that's
yeah. So
that's a
there were
major
other things
thing.
on there that we knew about, but
Okay,
just not that.
just not that.
I don't know if it might have been because I think at the time he was 8. So he was 8
Okay.
and she was 6. So when he was 8, they probably had not had a chance to diagnose it yet. Maybe he didn't. He
Mm,
never had an attack
okay,
prior to
hadn't
that
had a
or
major
something. You
attack.
know, the only
Okay,
other thing I can think of is like that weekend we had gone to a park that was in the middle of a forest. So I don't know if it was the
something.
leaves from that or what. I'm not sure, but
Okay,
yeah,
so you're in the hospital with the little boy. The little girl is at home, so now they're separated. Is
yeah,
she okay at home?
wasn't there to do with,
Okay,
but um, weird for them to be like
yeah,
apart because they're 8 and 6, so they're like,
in this brand new
what is
place, and
going on now?
now,
Now we separate again.
yeah,
um, so, but I I didn't really see like a whole lot of um, trauma or anything like that from
anything.
that as far as I could tell. So
And your biological kids were okay.
I don't
And
know.
just overall, like now, when they came into the home
Yeah,
and
there was definitely
reality
some
sets
adjustment for
in.
sure, definitely. Because again, at the home we had at that time, we had the boys' room was the biggest room, so they could we could see or sleep 3 boys in that one room.
Hmm.
So that I was mentioning earlier. So we had to kind of help with that and navigate through that. So they were. I would give them a ton of credit. They were willing to um, adjust and learn, and it wasn't always. I would try to sometimes let them go. Maybe to my parents' house or something like that to get a break or to
Hmm.
get away for a while or just have some privacy or something like that. So um, we tried to do things like that, uh, but I didn't just uh, force them all the time. But credit to them, like they just really just accepted them quite a bit. Yeah, there were times where they kind of test each other, and how boys are. They gotta
Yeah. Yeah.
they gotta figure out who the alpha is, and all of that type of stuff. And, but
So, how
um,
long
mhm.
did the boy and the girl stay in your home?
They never left.
Okay.
We weren't
So,
there. The goal from the beginning was for them to stay and be adopted.
walk me through that process because
Mhm.
is that a choice for you, or does the state say after at some point, okay, now they got to move someplace else? Like, who decides that these kids are staying?
That is in Michigan at least. You could pick from. It was like a website, and you can pick from children whose rights had already been parental rights had already been terminated and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so we basically strictly just picked from there, and we didn't, deal with the whole back and forth and all of that. So that's how that happened. So those two we actually uh, the caseworkers when we were at one of the picnics with the agency. So
Okay.
that's how that
Do
happened.
you know how many foster homes they have been in prior to you? Okay.
So it was just the one that they came from to our house. So they hadn't really been there that long, as far as I know. So um, everything was still,
Oh, that's what I was just going to say.
yeah.
Okay. So this is very new for them being separated from their biological parents
Hmm.
or mother or
Hmm.
whatever the case was. And so how long from the time that you they came into your home as foster children until you adopted? What's that timeline?
Years.
Mm,
Um, let's see, I was 2018. I think we about 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
okay.
When it finally finalized, it was basically like the caseworkers and the agencies and all of them. It was like, well, we think you guys it'd be best for them to, stay with you guys. And, we think you guys are doing a good job and, and all of that. So, prior to that, in the foster part of it. You have to maintain all of their, therapy appointments and all of the checkups, the house inspection, documenting everything, this child did this, child did that, all of that stuff. You have to, it was very, very, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it was very intrusive in order to, obviously, they have to be like that to protect children.
Right.
So they were interviewing us, they interviewed our parents, siblings, cousins, like all of that, like, making sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I am only asking this question just because you kind of see this stuff in the movies, if you will. Did
Mhm.
people actually check on these children once they came into your home, or did
You said,
they, or
did
did you?
they check
Yeah, because
from the
sometimes you hear about foster kids being dropped off and then
from the
nobody
from the
comes
agency in
from the
the
agency,
state?
nobody check or state, nobody
Oh
checks on them
yeah.
anymore.
Oh
Okay,
yes.
that's good to know.
Yeah, they
That's
made
good to
sure
know.
we were keeping up with all of the therapy stuff, all of those appointments. Like that was like almost every Saturday we had to go in and leave the room and let the people talk to them and all of that stuff.
I only asked
So
that
they were, yeah.
question, and I shouldn't say in the movies because it does happen in real life. But sometimes you hear about kids getting lost in the system because
Oh yes,
they, and
yeah,
so that's really good to
yeah.
know.
I've heard of that. I'm sure it happens in Michigan, but in our case, they were like on top of everything.
That's
Um,
good.
and it also might depend on the foster parent too. So we tried to make sure that we kept very, very good notes. I'm sure my wife was way better at it than I was. But we tried. Yeah.
So, how have the adoptive children at this point? How have they been adjusted? Well, you know what? Let me back up. Let me just clarify,
Hmm.
and this is just for the listeners because I do know the answer to this question. You adopted Black children, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Same race,
Hmm.
okay? Because that
Hmm.
makes a lot of difference. So while they're not in their biological, but they're still in their culture, if you will. It's not like they
Hmm.
went to a whole nother culture.
Right.
How have they been? How have they been since
Since
you
the
adopted? Yeah, how have they
it's
been?
always an up and down, and I'm sure that's
Okay.
with every single adoption. It's always been up and down. But I'll say this: the stories that I've heard from other either foster parents or adoptive parents, we had nowhere near the issues that they have had.
Mm.
So why? I guess as they say, God won't give you more than you give me. I don't know, but we have not had not anywhere near what some of the other stories I've
Some
heard.
of what you've
Yeah,
heard.
were there issues? Of course, it's always going to be that with even with biological children. Yeah, there were times we had to, for a moment, have like family therapy, where all seven of us, would go and sit in a room and hash stuff out, and
I
people got to
love
speak
that.
their mind and not, not have mom and dad be like, no, don't say that. Like, okay, what do you think? You
I
know, um,
love that because that's
yeah,
a
which
lot.
goes against how I was raised, but
Whew.
you
Whew.
speak your mind, you get the belt. But
You're not wrong.
in that environment, if I was to say anything really helped us, I would say it's that all seven of us going in together and talking and getting letting the kids be able to air stuff out. Since then, it has been I see them in each other's rooms and
Yeah.
watching certain things together and stuff like that. Whereas before, it was kind of the case, but not like it is now. So.
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay, so because you would chalk that up to is communication because everybody was
Hmm.
able to tell, okay, I don't like it when you do this, or
Hmm.
I like, you know, whatever. But I
Yeah.
commend you and your wife because, like you said, we weren't raised like that. You're not going to come in the room and tell your parents nothing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And they had to kind of say, mom and dad, like or the biological sometimes would say that, mom and dad, when person X does this, y'all don't say nothing, but I always get in trouble when I do it, and so we got to deal with that,
Right,
that
right,
type of stuff.
right. So
Yeah.
I commend you and your wife for being open to that. Let me ask, Whose idea was it for family therapy? Was that because you had been dealing with the
therapist,
system? Oh,
the therapist.
okay.
So it was the person that they were going to see. Um, we say, hey. So they basically said, hey, well, all y'all come in together, and of course, obviously, the oldest ones are just like, oh
I
man,
was literally just getting ready to ask you that.
yeah,
How did the
they did not want to do it at all. But then when they get in there, they the main ones talking.
Then they get all the things to say.
Right. Then when they leave and they got a smile on their face. You're like, yeah,
Yes.
see, I tried to tell you it was gonna help
See,
you, but see,
how often do you still go?
But at that time we were going like one day a week.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially being with you being a pastor, I'm always so happy to hear pastors talk about therapy, because for a long time you didn't hear that. It was just like, just go pray about it. And I always say and go to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
pray and do.
Yeah,
that
Scripture
all the
says
time.
add to your faith knowledge, and you gotta learn yourself. What's your triggers? What's your what do you like? You know what I'm saying? I tell people all the time, you better figure out what you like so you know how to avoid it, like or what you don't like.
Or what you don't like.
Yeah,
It's all about doing that inner work, that self work.
yeah.
And that is something that, and I can only speak to my own culture as a Black woman, that's just not how we was raised. That's just
I would say for me, because in the churches I grew up in, that wasn't something that was really talked about. But and you know this because we talked over dinner. But the kind of sort of the kind of church that I'm in now, it's a little bit more. For us, salvation is not just a moment that you said, Lord forgive me, and that's just that one moment. But for us, salvation is an ongoing like process, is an ongoing healing. So we're constantly being healed from what we would call the sickness of sin. And so part of that, being healed from it, is therapy. It's sort of a therapeutic method as well with this. So in our church we read a lot of the sayings of like the ancient church saints and and stuff like that. I know I'm getting a little deep, but
okay.
but those people that I'm talking about were referred to kind of in a sense of as like the first psychologists, some people will call them. And so they would talk about, like you just said, inner work. These are things people have been talking about in the church for thousands of years, but it was not taught to us as Black people, because we just didn't know about it. But when you go back and research church, they've been talking about inner work. They've been talking about therapy and accountability.
Is it that we didn't know about it, or is it that because we come from a culture of what goes on in the house stays in the house?
But
I'm gonna go tell all them people all my business, and you're not gonna heal either.
I mean, and I'm still like that, but being open to someone that is qualified to help you that's a whole different. I'm not just I don't advocate just talking to anybody.
But see, you got the mindset to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is different.
Mm-hmm.
I commend you for it, and I
Thank you.
Appreciate that, because oh my God, if we can get more of our people that look like us into therapy.
I've been studying the way that I had been. I probably would have been against it myself.
Wow.
Because I am a very, very private person.
Okay.
So going in, it's like I'll just internalize it and whatever, and I'll just keep working and move on. That is my default. So actually doing that, it's like, hey, bro, you got to live your faith. You've been preaching. You got to actually do it now.
So I want to ask you a question. It's referencing something you said early on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my brain trying to figure out how to ask. And I'm only asking because I know I have listeners that probably have the same question, so I'm going to ask it. Mm-hmm. What would you say to the people that would say you didn't have to adopt to, because early on you were saying about how the religion and taking care of orphans. What would you say to the people that would say, well, you didn't have to adopt to do that?
For those who are not called to do that. We have to read the scriptures not just theologically, but conceptually. What is the overarching concept that verse was trying to tell us? basically just taking care of other people. You might be called to take care of your biological kids. Not, you know what I'm saying? That's
I am.
that's taking care of people. You might be called to take care of your aunt that's living in the house and she's old and she doesn't, she's losing she has dementia or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You might be called to take care of a homeless person that you saw down the street or under, a bridge, whatever. We're all called to take care of somebody at some point, typically, for the most part. It's just a matter of who that is. So I think that verse is not saying, hey, specifically go find a widow, specifically go find some orphans, but just go find people that you can take care of. Maybe it might be, okay, God has assigned you this person to encourage because they're going through depression or something. You know what I'm saying? So just kind of, it's levels, different levels to that and variances to that. But I'm just saying, for me, that was literally the divine challenge, for me, because God knows I'll give $5 to the person on the corner or something like, I'll donate to the local shelter, stuff like that. Yeah. God's like, yeah, it's easy for you.
Yeah. Push you a
but do
more.
this other thing
do this other thing.
Yeah, you don't even know how you're going to do it, or can you do it? I'm putting that on you now.
Something I've noticed about you, because of course I watch social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're very studied. You're very you're studied. You read a lot. Yeah, you read a lot. And I think on top of your faith and what you do and all that you're doing and all that you've done, that makes all the difference in the world, because you read.
I think it was earlier this year or last year that, reading expands, for whatever reason, tends to expand people's empathy level. So when you read a lot, you tend to be more empathetic to other people because you get to go into their worlds. And so I'm always asking this question of, man, what would it be like for me to be in that situation? Or what would it be like for me to have been this person or dealt with that or gone through this, And so that's why it was like, there's no way I can leave this boy by himself like that.
Yeah.
Because I would probably turn into a gang member. You know what I'm saying? If somebody did that to me. You know what I'm just.
No, that's real.
Yeah. I cannot do that. So, that's my guy.
So what would you say, it's going to be my last question. What would you say to anyone that's thinking about fostering and then wanting to adopt? What advice would you give them?
The time.
And
I would say you ever actually go through with it and do it. So I'll just from the top of my head, because I didn't prepare answers, but for one, like you said earlier, it is very, 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 very key. Inner work. You got to work on yourself first. You have to, and I have a blog that I talk about this type of stuff for this reason. You have to learn how to slow down your mind and your heart rate and all of that stuff to get it at it, because these children's gonna do something to you. Or they're gonna do something to your house, punch a hole in your wall, whatever. And you're gonna have to know how to calm your mind and your heart rate down in order to respond. So on my blog, I talk about doing what's called the Jesus prayer, for example. You don't have to do this, but this is what I do
for my child.
Yeah. So, do the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. This is an ancient prayer from Christians living in the Egyptian desert back in the 4th century or whatever, right? So we do this prayer, and I do it with breaths, and I breathe, and, so doing a lot of that type of inner work, figuring out what, for lack of a better word, pisses you off, what makes you mad, is it a child talking back? Is that something that just make you just grab a child and, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Can't do that if you're fostering. You can't snatch that child up. So now what do you do, right? So all that stuff, you got to be able to learn how to figure out a way that works for you to be able to calm down and then be able to think. So inner work for sure. Taking the classes, they have all kinds of classes like online or that the state gives you and what have you. So definitely take those classes. Practice. Yes. So like I don't know if you have biological children, have them pretend to be just a child that's just going, doing crazy stuff. And you can kind of practice your response. What are you going to say? How are you going to come down to their level? And, their mind is somewhere else and they're not listening to you. And, you got to practice all of that. So the class is practice. And I will say the last thing is probably support group. It is very, very easy to get into a mode of self-pity as though you are the only foster or adoptive parent going through this problem or going through this situation. If you get into a support group, you'll find out, oh, wow, I'm not the only one. Matter of fact, they got it worse than I do a lot of times. So that definitely helps. Me and my wife will sit in on calls sometimes. They have Zoom calls with like local foster and adoptive parents.
Okay.
And the stuff, we'd be like, we're not dealing with that. Thank God. But they're called to that child, but we're called to the ones that we're called to. But those are things that I would highly recommend. And go slow. Don't run into it so fast. A lot of times people they want just the babies. But consider older child. They're not all, problem child, not all of them. If you just figure out how their mind works,
I did say that was my last question, but your answer made me think of something else I did want to ask. The difference, do you ever find yourself showing a difference between your biological children and your adoptive children? Treatment, discipline?
All 5 of them, they're treated equally, but different. One child I can use a voice at, and they'll straighten right on up. Another child, I don't need to do all that because, I can just ask them and they'll just do it. So I don't have to raise my voice at this particular child. Another child, my biological age is not their mental age. So sometimes I have to, so you ask them, man, why did you do that? Yeah, they might be 13, but really they're 10. Gotcha. Sometimes they're 12, but they can kind of go up, just depending on what the situation is. So everyone's treated equally, but not everyone gets the same process of discipline for the most part. Some just need a little bit more leniency. They're not there yet.
It's just based on each child's personality.
Yeah.
Basically, I get that. That makes sense. Well, I want to thank you for coming because my cousin was like, "You want me to come on your show?" Yes, you're an adopted parent.
I told you I'm private. How are you a pastor? You're private. I am. So you'll find a lot of pastors are introverts. I'm very, very introverted. But
before we go, please tell the people about your blog.
Oh yeah. It's hard to, but it's Blue Church Book at beehive.com, but they spell beehive weird. So beehive is BEEHIIV and then .com.
Okay, I'll make sure to drop that in the
maybe put like a but it's Blue Church Book at beehive. It's basically talking about health and vitality and doing a lot of the inner work as for people that are Christian professionals and entrepreneurs. So a lot of us, I focus on like work anxiety a lot there. So a lot there is like, your boss is crazy. So here's some steps you can try to get yourself to calm down and go back to work, so that type of thing. So I'm in IT and I've done a lot of crying in server rooms. So, you come to work and they're like, everything's down, nothing's working. You got to, Jerome, can you figure it out? And you're just like, oh my Lord. Okay. So then you got to figure out how to bring yourself down. And, so that's what I talk about a lot of that type of stuff.
That's inner work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you so much for coming and talking. I guarantee you this conversation is going to help somebody because somebody needed to hear that. Somebody's thinking about doing exactly what you just did, and either they're going to do it or they're not going to do it based on your conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
just try and see, and it might not be for you, and that's okay, But
and
if it is for you, God bless you.
got sure.
Mm-hmm.
And hang on, Jerome, don't hang up, but give me 1 second. And
Okay.
on that note, family, see you next week. Bye, family.